Hello everyone, you're very welcome to KCTB's external authentication briefing for 2026. The content of our briefing will cover an introduction to KCTB in Section 1. Section 2 will move on to the QA procedures. Section 3 will be external authentication and our processes here in KCTB. And in Section 4, the conclusion, will just wrap up everything that we covered across the first three sections. Section 1 is an introduction to KCTB. Here's a list of our full-time provision and part-time provision in KCTB. So in full-time provision, we have our two PLCs, so Carlow Institute of Further Education and Training and College of Further Education and Training Kilkenny, formerly Ormond College, which has an outreach centre in Graham College. We also have vocational training opportunity schemes, so our VTOS Kilkenny, which is also in last year merged in under the College of Further Education and Training Kilkenny. We reach Carlow and our training services provision, which operates across Carlow and Kilkenny. Our part-time provision is our two BTI centres, one in Carlow and one in Kilkenny, and our two adult learning services, one in Carlow, one in Kilkenny. The services with the stars just indicate that they're the ones that are going forward in this window for EA and are centres that you would be attending to EA in. Briefly, here's a map of the locations of the centres across KCTB, so you can see the breakdown of adult education, PLC training services programs across both counties. To give you the contact details of the QA department, so we're based in Unit 10 Danville Business Park on the Ring Road in Kilkenny. There's our phone number and email address, and we also have our own website, kctbqa.ie. If you go to that website, you'll see the image there, and we have I am a staff member, learner, external authenticator. So if you click on the external authenticator, that will bring you to the page where we'll have the files related to this briefing uploaded after this training. So at some stage next week, those files will be uploaded and we'll circulate an email to let you know. But this website, I suppose, is our public-facing website, so it's where we publish our policies and documents for a wider audience. We also have our internal QA portal, which is for sharing documents that are only for staff, like our descriptors, for example. So section 2 is our QA procedures. Here is a list of the key documents that are related to external authentication in KCTB. So we have our guidance documents from QQI. I'm sure you're familiar definitely with two of them, which are the QQI core statutory QA guidelines and the policy on quality assurance guidelines. They are linked here in the presentation, and you'll be able to click on them and get access to them directly from the presentation. They focus on the independence and externality of the EA as a subject matter expert within the QA system, and it's an important aspect of assessment process to ensure credibility to the awards being achieved by the learners. Since the end of 2025, QQI have introduced two new documents, the internal guidelines for providers 2025 and the interim guidelines for external authenticators 2025. We will go through in a further slide some of the changes or some of the things that you might need to be aware of from the interim guidelines for external authenticators, and these documents also are linked here in the PowerPoint, so you'll be able to get direct access. We also have our two KCTB policies. So we have our assessment policy and our guidelines for completing external authentication, which was updated this month. They're basically what we're going to go through today. So on this slide, we're looking at the KCTB quality assurance procedures that are followed here, and I'm sure they're the same across all ETBs. And we start with the assessment corrections. So the learner will submit their assessment pieces against the assessment techniques and the briefs put forward by the teachers. The internal assessor then corrects the learner's work and records the results on the marking sheets. Internal verification is the next process, which may be done by an individual in the centre, or there may be a team working to IV the different modules. And this is an independent verification of the results awarded, and the outcomes are then recorded on an IV report, which should be available to you when you're EAing in the centre. Our next step is the external authentication, where an independent authentication of a defined sample of learner evidence is looked at, and the outcomes of these are recorded on an EA report, which you will complete and then send back to us in QA and to the centre. And those EA reports then form part of the results approval process, where a RAP panel is convened to approve the results presented, and the outcomes and actions are noted on a RAP report. So for QQI awards, the operation of IV and EA, its core quality assurance mechanism, which seeks to ensure fairness, consistency, and validity of assessment and of assessment outcomes. And each KCTB centre follows the process outlined here. So moving on to section 3, it's our external authentication processes in KCTB. So for the appointment of EAs, we look at who, when, and how. So for the who do KCTB appoint as EAs within our centre? So as you know, the QA department are responsible for the booking of EAs within KCTB, so it's centrally managed in KCTB. And we appoint EAs from DTI Directs, a database, ensuring that the EA has subject matter expertise within the area and field of learning, and that they are able to operate within the code of practice and guidelines issued by QQI, that they're available within the time window for EA that the centre is looking for, and that they're independent of the centre and KCTB. So when does all of this happen? We use our assessment period calendar here to kind of look at this. So we work back from the QQI submission date. We go back a couple of weeks to look at our RAP provisional date. This is to ensure that we have enough time to send out provisional results to learners while also giving them ample time for appeal before the QQI submission window. And then we work back from the RAP provisional date to have an EA start and complete date. So that's our EA window. And that's to give enough time for the EAs to submit their report to us and for those reports to be reviewed before the RAP. And then working back from that, we ask the centres to submit their request to the QA office, a number of months before an EA is due, and that's to give the QA office time to source EAs and book EAs for the centres for those assessment windows. And in terms of that, then you would have received communication from Peter, who would have contacted you in relation to see your availability, and then put in place kind of EA agreements such as the GDPR agreements and service agreements, and we'll go through those documents in the next slide. So as you can see, there are plenty of documents in the EA pack that gets emailed out to you. Firstly, there's 2 Adobe files for signature. They're sent to you as one document where you'll sign the service agreement for the EA that you're booked for, and then the GDPR agreement around the sharing of information. Then we have our A1, so our external authentication commencement form. So just to note that if you have EA'd up for us before and you're on our system, you don't need to fill this in unless your bank details have changed. So if your bank details have changed, you need to fill this in so we can send it to finance and have your bank details updated. If you've never EA'd for us before, you will need to fill this in so that you can be put on our system for payment. Second is the EA report. So this report you have the link to it here, and when you click on that, that's the report you fill in, and when it's completed, you send it to the centre contact and to us in QA at qa.info@kilkennycarlow.etb.ie. And just to note that the sampling strategy is listed in the report, and that we're looking at EAs kind of abiding by the sampling strategy. If you feel the need to oversample just to justify that, so maybe there was totting errors, or you had put forward some grade changes, so you would oversample just to ensure that all the other learners' results were correct. Please use this as well as your EA report as link especially if you've EA'd for us before, as we do update the report and it's on version 4.0 at the moment. So make sure you're using the most up-to-date report. Then after after EAing, we would look at the payment. So for payment, there's three forms. So if you are EAing remotely, you'll only fill in the first form, the EA claim form. But if you're EAing in center, you'll fill in the claim form, your travel and subsistence form, and your travel indemnity declaration form. Just to say that these forms need to be physically signed. Our finance department will only take physical signatures, so you will need to print them, sign them, and then you can scan them and email them back to us, or you can post it to the address there. And just to say, like, it is two different systems that are used for payment within KCTB. So the EA claim form for your work, your day's work or a couple of days' work, that's processed by us in QA. But your travel and subsistence is processed by finance. So you'll send all of these documents to us in QA, and we'll process the claim form here and send your travel and subsistence to finance, who will process it, which may mean that you could get payments at different times, so they're different systems, so you may receive a split payment. For your claim form, usually will come in first, and your travel and subsistence then could be the month after, depending on when it's processed by finance. Then lastly, we have documents for your information. So Peter would have attached in his email your EA workload, which will give the list of the modules, the provisional number of learners and sample size, the EA procedures, which outline our EA procedures in KCTB, and again, the sample strategies within that. You'll also have a central location, contact details, which gives you the name of your EA contact, their contact details, a picture of the center, and a Google Map link and map of the area, so it's easier to find the center. And lastly, your domestic travel and subsistence rates. Just to note that under revenue, travel and subsistence is now subject to tax and has been for the last year or so. So it's important to know that, but it was also one of the reasons around increasing the day rate to try and counteract some of the loss of the travel and subsistence being taxed now. So this is a list of what we expect centres to have ready before the EA visit. So in advance of the EA visit, the centre should have the relevant award specification, module descriptors, and validated program information if appropriate, all relevant assessment instruments and appropriate supporting documentation, for example, assessment briefs, examination papers, marking schemes, online solutions, assessment plans, timetables if appropriate, all learner assessment evidence, all learner assessment results recorded on appropriate result sheets, a list of assessors per program and or class group, the internal verification report, and the past EA report. So this will enable you to have an effective professional judgment of the learner results, ensuring that they meet with national standards, and we should avoid any delays in the EA visit, because once you have all the documentation ready, it's just easier to get started with the work. In terms of the role of an EA according to the QQI policy on quality assurance guidelines, a provider-owned quality assurance system makes appropriate use of external persons who are independent of the provider and who are expertly qualified to make relevant national and international comparisons. This really sums up what we expect of the EA. The EAs are subject matter experts who can see if the learner evidence meets the relevant national standard for that level and that module. So for the external authentication event visit, during the EA visit, the EAs are expected to moderate the learner grades, review the assessment documentation, sample a selected learner work against the QA sampling strategy, check the marking sheets, and liaise with the centre contact person. So it should not just monitor, it shouldn't be repeat IV, and QA has issued digital management guidelines as well to the centres to try and make it easier for you to be able to navigate through the documents that you're going to see, especially if they're online. But it is important that It's looking at the learner grades against the national standard and ensuring that the learners have been graded appropriately. The role of the EA again is to apply your professional judgment as subject matter experts. So again, if you feel that a learner hasn't reached the national standard or the grade that has been applied to the learner is not correct, that you make in your professional judgment that you fill that in on the EA report and say that you're recommending a grade change, because you are looking to make sure that the learner evidence is consistent with the national standards, that you're following the external authentication processes, and that you're also technically competent for online roles, but also with the fact that an awful lot of the evidence is now contained digitally. Whereas I suppose a number of years ago it would have been mostly hard copy, but since COVID, a lot of the evidence has moved online. So to be able to access the information, whether it's through Moodle or Teams when you're visiting a centre. And again, just in terms of the national standards for us, like the critical points, and I'm sure for yourselves as well, is the judgment between the bands and grades. So between referred and pass and merit and distinction. So it's important that learners are checked who are on those boundaries to ensure that they are of the standard for those grades. So as I mentioned earlier in the previous slide, that QQI have released 2 new documents as of the end of 2025, and one of them pertains to external authentication, which is the interim guidelines for external authenticators 2025. So just to kind of give you a bit of an input on what potentially is new within those documents for you to be aware of. So in terms of assessment standards and judgment, it states that the award standard is now the minimum intended program learning outcomes, so the MIPLOs, and the minimum intended module learning outcomes, or the MIMLOs, of the validated program. So these MIMLOs have replaced the LOs from previous documents. But these are just a reference point for EA judgment. In KCETB, for example, then this relates to new programs validated under the new award structure, but also to updated CAS modules. There was 24 modules that were updated as part of the national review. But any of the CAS modules, MIMLOs in KCETB, we're viewing the descriptors as updated content because the overall program has not yet been revalidated. So as such, with the PDAS awards, the new ones, like the ELC, the learner should be getting kind of 50% in the assessment techniques. But for the updated CAS awards, we're saying that once the learner gets 50% across the module, then they're deemed to have passed. They don't require 50% in each assessment technique because the overall major award has not been revalidated yet under the new program structure. Also saying that the external authentication is an independent professional judgment. It's not a repeat of the internal verification or procedural checklist that you are making a judgment call when you view the learner assessment. So it's an exercise of your professional judgment, and if there's a question of whether the learner has met the standard or potentially has exceeded the national standard and should be getting a grade above what it got, then within your professional judgment, if you feel the grade should be changed, please fill in the grade change section of the report. In terms of the assessment practice and quality, the EA Authenticate assessment as validated and implemented on the ETB's module descriptor. So it's as implemented post-validation, but just to know that some of these validation changes to assessment may have happened in an ETB as they're managed through the provider's QA procedure. So that would mean that a program may have been validated with certain assessment techniques, but those assessment techniques may have been changed through local procedures. So just to make sure that you are looking at the module descriptors that KCETB use and that you're not referencing any other ETB's module descriptors as they may be different. But it's important that you do raise concerns promptly with the centre and QA if there are any concerns either over the integrity of the assessment or any other issues, and where these issues remain unresolved and serious, then you could escalate them to QQI. But It's to address them at the center first. If that doesn't work, then you address them with QA, and only after that, then if it hasn't been resolved, then QQI are now saying that you can escalate those serious unresolved issues to them. The whole idea, anyway, is to maintain the integrity and authenticity of the learner evidence. So you should remain alert to any issues affecting the reliability, integrity, or authenticity of the learner evidence or records, and record where those concerns have been identified. This is our sampling strategy. So you can see for it's divided between levels 1 to 3 and then levels 4 to 6 due to the fact that levels 4 to 6 have distinction, merit, and pass, where levels 1 to 3 you're either successful or unsuccessful. So at level 1 to 3, if you have 3 learners, 1 to 3 learners in the group, then all portfolios should be sampled. If there's 4 to 19 learners, then only 3 need to be sampled. And if there's 20 or more portfolios, then you take 15% rounded up. So you can see here with the example that 22 portfolios gives 3.3 when 15% is taken, so we'd round that up to 4. If there's more than one assessor within that module group, then you must ensure that you take at least one learner from each assessor as part of your overall sample. Levels 4 to 6, it's slightly different in that it's still 1 to 3 portfolios or learners. All portfolios should be sampled. When it's 4 to 39 portfolios, it's somewhere in the range of 3 to 6. So it all depends on the border grades of the learners. So, for example, you can see in the bottom there, you have 16 portfolios presented, and 6 were at distinction, 8 merit, 1 pass, 1 unsuccessful. So in the selection process, you're going to choose the lowest distinction, the highest and lowest merit. Because there's only 1 pass, there's no highest and lowest pass. So you're looking at just that pass, and you're going to take the only successful, which would normally be anyway here, the highest unsuccessful. So that would give you a sample of 5. So again, it's going to range between 3 and 6 depending on the spread of the grades. And once you are with 40 or more portfolios, you're looking at 15%, again, rounded up. So with 42 portfolios, again, the sample will be 6.3, and we'd round that up to 7. So our EA report, we're on version 4.0. So what we look at within the EA report is the observations on the assessment and consistency within national standards. So you're checking that the learner evidence meets the national standard. You're looking to see where it doesn't, then are you recommending grade changes if you are to fill in that grade change section of the report? Evidence that you have cited the internal verification report, that there has been consideration of the previous external authentication recommendations. Just to note at the end of the report that you should be seeing, there is a section that we fill in post-RAP where we put in what has been decided on the recommendations from the EA at RAP. So we'll be specifying which recommendations we are taking on and enacting and which we may not have taken on. So you need to comment on the effectiveness of the application of the assessment processes and procedures, any recommendations you may have, and finally, whether you recommend that the learner results should be submitted for certification. Here we have a list of feedback that we've received from RAP reports, just for your information. So just to know that module descriptors, as I said before, they are reviewed and updated locally, so they may differ from other ETB's approved descriptors, and the updates are made as part of our governance and quality management process. So again, not to be using other ETB descriptors as reference point, but using case ETB's descriptors. Some centers don't print provisional results, so you may get the provisional results in digital in PDF format. It is okay to sign them digitally, to use Adobe Reader, their fill and sign. To sign them, we do accept digital signatures. Just to note, the bespoke arrangements are not always possible for EAs. Some EAs like to work in a room alone, some in a shared space, some prefer to have materials printed. it'll depend on the resources available from the centre on the day as to whether certain arrangements can be made for EAs. To note that provisional numbers are being authenticated or subject to change. So when we get in our request from centres for EA, they give us the numbers at the time of learners going forward. So that number may change. Usually it goes downwards. So it's important that you apply the EA sampling strategy against the actual numbers on the day, as what we give you in the workload is just an indication of the numbers that could be there. To note that feedback is delivered in many different ways within the centre. So our briefs that the learners use has space for feedback, but that's only for summative feedback. There is formative feedback given in different ways, whether verbally or through Moodle, but it's just important to know that it may not be, feedback may not be listed where you're expecting it. Please use the grade change section to comprehend grade changes. So comments in the body of the report, such as this could be an item for discussion at the RAP meeting, which are recommending grade changes to be considered at RAP. It would be great if that was then also copied into the grade change section of the report, and that you use your professional judgment to decide if it should be a grade change or not, and ensure that all the columns of the grade change section are completed. Do not include learner PPS numbers on grade changes. If you just use the learner's initials and their original grade, we'll be able to locate that once it's assigned to the correct module. And if you could discuss proposed grade changes with the internal assessor, if at all possible. So you have your link person within the centre that you're EAing. So if there's any issues around grade changes, please have that discussion with them. You're all familiar with the NFQ grid of level indicators. I have it linked in the document as well, as it's hard to see on the screen. But it's a good indicator of the standard of work and a means to check that the learners provided evidence that meets that standard of that level. So you'll be looking at, does the evidence you observe show the required knowledge, skills and competencies as reflective of that level of the program module. As stated earlier, the arrangements for the EA visit are made by the QA team and on appointment of the EA as outlined in section 3. Just to note that communication with the centre itself is through the contacted person in that centre. So you'll have a nominated contact person for any issues or concerns related to the EA process itself. We will link you with that EA centre person, and we ask you to highlight any issues promptly with the centre contact to allow resolution. So if there's missing documents or assessment materials, if you can, as soon as you are aware of that, if you can let the centre contact person know so that they can rectify this. EA is again asked to highlight grade changes being recorded with the centre contact person, and if you can give a brief review on conclusion of the EA visit with the centre contact, that would be great. Again, any serious issues that may arise, discuss them with the contact, and if you can let the centre know what time to expect you in the morning. So again, we're just asking that EAs are booked for certain days. So if you're booked to come in on a Tuesday and Wednesday, that you come in the Tuesday and Wednesday and don't arrive on the Monday, that you arrive on the day, because certain centres may have 13 or 14 EAs, so it's just to make sure that their logistics kind of organise this, that they have people there ready. And if you could indicate, say, if you're going to be arriving at 8:30, 9, or 9:30, so they can ensure that there's somebody there to meet you when you arrive. The majority of centres will be in-centre EA, so to link with the centre contact around accessing the centre, as I said, trying to let them know what time that they should expect you and arriving on the day that's been booked. The evidence itself may be displayed in different format depending on the centre. So some centres may be in hard copy, some may be digital. Your contact person will explain how the centre is presenting the learner evidence, whether it's through Moodle, Teams, OneDrive, ePortfolio, hard copy, etc. And the EA report, that you would submit that electronically after you have completed it to both us in the QA department and to your centre contact. And again, keep communication channels open with the centre contact. If conducting the external authentication remotely, it's practically the same as delivering it in centre. The only difference is that you're not in the centre. So again, with your EA report, it's submitted electronically to ourselves under centre contact and keeping the communication channels opening. So checking in the morning with the contact and again at the end of the day as a minimum. But you will be logging in through Microsoft OneDrive or Moodle. The folders will be shared in advance by the center, and it's important that you do check in advance that you can access the evidence, that you're able to log in, so that if you can't, this is sorted before the day of external authentication. Our last section is to conclude, so we'll just wrap up everything that we've covered in the first 3 sections. So as a recap, KCHB QA procedures and QQI guidelines are available to support you, and all the links are linked in this PowerPoint, which will be shared. Our key documents and information are available on our website, kctbqa.ie. Arrangements are set for the EA are made by QA, so we're the link person in regards to the booking and your payments and anything to do around the kind of suppose the HR logistics that way. But in relation to the learner evidence and access to the site, all of that is through your centre contact person. As in QA, we don't have access to any of the learner data or evidence. So communicate, as I said, with the centre contact person with any EA issues and us for anything around payment or HR. And we will send a copy of this presentation and have it on the website in the coming days. Again, to just let you know the contacts, there's Peter who's been in contact with you through the booking of the EA, and myself. We're available in the QA office in Danville Business Park in Kilkenny, and we have our phone number and email address here. I'd like to thank you for attending the briefing and taking time to work for KCHB during this busy QQI window. I look forward to working with you and welcoming your feedback, and just ensure that the EA report was returned in a timely manner, so within 2 days to both QA and the centre contact, so that we have time to review it before we have our wrap. Submit your claim forms directly to us for early payment as soon as possible. And as I said, there's 2 systems, so you may receive your payment for the day's work before you receive your payment for your travel and subsistence. Any queries, just contact us at qa.info@kilkennycarlow.ie. Lastly, if you have any questions, please feel free to get in contact using the contact details, and we'll try to address them as soon as possible. Thank you.